Though it's been difficult to strike deals with them in the past, should the Royals still view the Los Angeles Angels as a trade partner? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned in to another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. You also can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering how this channel works, we bring you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes in length. But if you're wondering where our episode was yesterday, I actually did a crossover episode with KC Sports Authority. Keegan and I went back and forth for about 30 to 35 minutes. So go check out their YouTube channel for our episode on Monday. But you can always expect at least 5 episodes or 5 forms of content every single week, including the offseason. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. I wanted to continue this segment from a topic that Keegan and I discussed on our episode yesterday for KC Sports Authority. And if you don't know how to find their YouTube channel, just go to my Twitter page, and I already quote tweeted the episode they put out there. But we discussed the idea of the Royals acquiring Joe Adell, and then I brought up Taylor Ward's name once again. And so in this conversation, it kind of kept coming back to, well, can you realistically get a deal done with the Angels? And why the Angels have been so difficult to strike deals with in the past is I personally believe they view that their team is much further ahead than they really are. Now, I want to be clear that in baseball, I'm never going to overly criticize a team that tries to stay competitive, right? Just because the team that I cover can't make trades with them doesn't mean that I should look down upon them trying to build a consistent team. Because what we saw from the White Sox in 2024, what we saw from the Rockies in 2025, I firmly believe that's terrible for baseball. To have one team that is just beaten up on like that all season long, it's not good for the overall product. I will say this, though, when trying to build a competitive winner, sometimes in building a competitive winner means that you have to truly look yourself in the mirror and know where you are at. The Royals had to do that a handful of times where even though they wanted to be closer than they really were, it didn't make sense to hang on to guys that they had value in. And in some of those years, they held on to guys far too long, which is what I see the Angels doing right now. And I can see that comparison. The way the Angels have operated the last couple of years reminds me of the way the Royals were operated in 2019 to 2022, where they just didn't want to give up guys that they put a lot of stock in, because that would be admitting into a rebuild. That would be saying, we're a few years away and we have to acquire young talent and get that young talent to the big leagues. The Angels, though, haven't been to the postseason since the Royals swept them out of it in 2014. This is not a 3 to 4 year drought. This is a decade-plus long drought. And that's why I wonder, going into this offseason, having a new manager at the helm, they haven't announced the hiring yet, but Albert Pujols' name keeps getting brought up over and over again. Ron Washington, of course, is not coming back. They somewhat went for it at the deadline this past July. Not really, though. They got some bullpen help, and they ended up finishing dead last in their division. So at the time, a team that was awful in the run differential department, they then kind of came back down to earth and finished last behind the Sacramento Athletics. So I view that finish to the year, and you roll into the offseason, you have a new manager, as the perfect time. And yes, I'm going to say this to spin it for my narrative. It's the perfect time to really commit to this rebuild. Have a young manager like an Albert Pujols, take on some of this young talent and try to craft a team to compete in 2 years instead of trying to compete in the American League West in 2026. That would then bring guys to the table like Joe Adell and Taylor Ward, two guys that would be absolutely huge pickups for the Royals. Taylor Ward's name has been brought up over and over again the last handful of years. Joe Adell is going to be the new name that we bring up this offseason because Joe Adell is coming off a breakout season. He's more of an older prospect, not sold that he fits that timeline. The Angels, if they're going to operate the same way, would look at Joe Adell and say he's not going anywhere. But Taylor Ward becomes a part of this conversation because he will be a free agent after this year. Does that make sense for the Royals to go acquire a guy they've been trying to get the last handful of years, but you'd only get him for 1 year? I could see some logic in it. The price would be way down compared to what it was a year or two ago. But J.J. Picollo and company don't always love going for those rental players. Even if it's somebody as intriguing as Taylor Ward, who had a 30-plus home run season. Same goes for Joe Adell. These guys can play multiple outfield spots. Taylor Ward can even play a little bit of the infield. So you've got that defensive flexibility there. The question becomes, though, do you even entertain it? Right? Is it something where you go pick up the phone, call the Angels, and say, what's the asking price on these players? And if they continue to hit you with the astronomical asking price that they've continuously done over the last handful of years, and not just to the Royals, then maybe you just don't view them as a trade partner until a new front office is put in place there, right? Until you have different voices, different minds up there that can really look at where this Angels team is at and say, we need to get value for guys that are not going to be on our next competitive bunch. And it's hard to do. It's tough to do to the fan base, but I would say to that fan base, have you been pleased with them not selling off these players and missing the postseason the last 11 years? I would almost say at this point, yeah, it's more than a few years late, but at some point you have to tear it all down and start again. And the Angels seem to be stuck in that limbo of, well, we have Mike Trout under contract. We don't want to do wrong by him and having him play on multiple 100-loss teams. But they're a 90-loss team. They're a high 80s loss team year in and year out. And he's not getting any younger and he's not getting any healthier. So in a perfect world, this is the exact team the Royals need to try to strike a deal with. It's just tough to get deals done with them. If they are going to continuously ask for your top prospects, guys in the top 5 for players that aren't worth that, then you maybe just need to go in a different direction. I mean, the Royals have a lot of familiarity with the Padres and making deals with them. They have a lot of familiarity in making deals with the Rangers. So those are two teams they like to go back to over and over again. And those are the two teams I'm still going to keep an eye on. But you can't rule out some of these other teams just because that they may be tougher to negotiate with. But I understand that goes against the point I just made. I'm more so getting at it shouldn't stop you from trying. If you try and you're not getting anywhere, then maybe even at the deadline, you're not going back to the Angels because there are just certain players that you're not going to be willing to give up in deals. And I feel that J.J. Picollo and that front office have been very, very strict on that exact point. We're going to entertain bringing in players, but we also have our untouchables, not just in Kansas City. We have them at the minor league level. And it is going to lead into our second segment here about have the Royals reached a point in time where trading prospects is kind of necessary because you don't do it when you have lightning in a bottle in 2024. You're still building this roster in 2025. You're not in an all-in type of season. Then it comes to this point where you've got some big offensive threats on bad teams out there. And why I would say, to add to that point, the Angels in a perfect world are that perfect trade destination is they're not close enough to compete right now where trading away a prospect would burn you that terribly. Maybe down the road it would. But when trading away some guys that are right on the cusp of making their big league debut and you bring in an everyday player, you don't want to get burned by a team that can eliminate you in the postseason or prevent you from getting to the postseason. Those are just kind of the things I always keep in the back of my mind. But going back to that point, if they're not going to, be realistic about some of these trade ideas, then I don't really know how you can keep going back to them. I mean, Taylor Ward has been a trade target for 2 years now. And I'm not sure that the Royals or anybody ever came that close to striking a deal. At least that's just one man's opinion. What do you think about the Royals and Angels striking a deal this offseason? And if so, who would it be for? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, are the Royals in a place where they can start trading away some of these top prospects? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. First sponsor we want to tell you about is Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. In continuation of our previous segment there of the Angels being a trade partner, if it makes sense to go back there, how long do you really give them in trade negotiations, right? Are you constantly going back to them every other week, every other month, or is it we're going to ask the price of this player, and if it's nowhere close to what we're willing to give up, then we're done negotiating. We're going to work on other organizations and look at other players and try to bring them in. This kind of goes hand in hand, though, with how long you'd be willing to negotiate with a team asking for your top prospects. Are the Royals in a position where they can trade away a Blake Mitchell? They can trade away a Drew Beam. They can trade away a Ben Kudrna. Those guys that we have heard about for years and years, not so much Drew Beam because he was brand new into this farm system last year. More so, guys like Blake Mitchell, Ben Kudrna, Frank Mozzicato, if there's any value still there, Carson Roccaforte. The Royals were able to get out of this past deadline without giving up anybody that was a big-time prospect. I mean, the highest-ranked one was Junior Marte, I believe, in the deal for Mike Yastrzemski, and the Royals got a lot out of Mike Yastrzemski in the second half of the season. But that's for Mike Yastrzemski, a mid-30s corner outfield bat, more of a platoon guy that was going to be a free agent. He was a rental bat. If you're wanting to get that everyday left fielder, and if you are wanting to move the needle with this offseason, if you are wanting to really upgrade this lineup, you kind of have to be in that position of trading away these top-level guys. And I'm not sure if Blake Mitchell still has that top 100, shine to him. He's coming off a year where he broke his hand in spring training, joined mid-season, and then didn't really put up good numbers. Ben Kudrna had a really good start to the year, and then once he was promoted, the numbers weren't really there. Carson Roccaforte did start to improve in the last half of the season, but I'm not sure that he's the guy that could get you that everyday player in a corner outfield spot. So this more so comes down to trading away maybe one of your pitchers in Kansas City and packaging them with a top-level prospect that you have. Because we all know with prospects, it can get a little bit hairy, right? Everybody overvalues their own prospects. When you think about it, when the Royals have made trades in the past, and they were the ones that were selling, they were giving up their everyday players, and they were bringing in, top 15 prospects. There were guys that they brought in that did absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing, zero, nada. And at the time, it looked like a good deal because they were bringing in some 22-year-old, some 21-year-old that might have been a top 100 at some point, but they were top 15 in the system. The Royals don't have a top 5 farm system in baseball. So their number one or number two is closer to maybe a 6 or a 7, maybe a 9 or 10 in those best farm systems in all of baseball. That's why it's not to be reckless with trading away these prospects, but understand some of these guys are not going to pan out. They are not going to be players that burn you down the road. And the player that's going to come up more than a few times in trade discussions is Blake Mitchell. Blake Mitchell was a top 100 guy. He was a first-round pick, a top 10 pick. Now that they've added in a couple more draft picks from this past class, he's not the number 1 overall guy, but he's been number 1 before, and we know the upside is still there. He's great behind the plate, very strong arm, a polished and mature plate approach, but he doesn't hit for average. He is somewhat of a powerful bat. I do wonder, though, if that's more so of the competition he's facing and the parks he's hitting in, as opposed to just being a great power bat behind the plate. And then you factor in Carter Jensen breaks into the big leagues in September and plays really well. It's not that Carter Jensen should dictate if they should move Blake Mitchell, but it has to play a part in it. It absolutely has to. I don't want to get to a world in 2027 where Carter Jensen is playing every single day and Blake Mitchell is about to get to the big leagues, and then you have to worry about moving one of those guys out of position. The Royals already do that far too many times. And these are two guys that can excel behind the plate, which is why, even with another catcher like Ramon Ramirez, you could be in a position to make a deal. And you can package one of those starting pitchers and you can add him in and get that bat you've been searching for the last 2 to 3 seasons. You don't want to get into April of next year and you're still running it back with that same offense that was bottom 5 in all of baseball last year. You want to have some guys that can be difference makers. And if that means giving up a top 5 prospect in your system, well, yeah, you are still rolling the dice that the player you acquire turns out to be the missing piece. And even though you're wishing the best for Blake Mitchell, you don't want to look back in 2 to 3 years and this is a multiple-time All-Star and this is a guy that is just terrorizing you every time you face him. But that's also baseball to a T. If you are closer to a championship than the team you're dealing with, these are moves that happen all the time. You trade away prospects for a guy on their roster, and they're going to regret it in the first year or 2 of that deal. And if all works out, they're the ones that are reaping the benefits a couple years down the road. But that's not always the case. Prospects are unproven commodities. And I always go back to when the Royals acquired Andrew Benintendi and they gave up Khalil Lee. And at the time, I was high on Khalil Lee. A lot of people were high on Khalil Lee on the Royals farm system. And he didn't end up doing anything for the Mets. In fact, he had a horrific strikeout rate in the first 30 to 35 at-bats of his big league career. I want to say he struck out upwards of 50 to 55% of the time. I mean, he was completely overmatched when he made his debut for the Mets. And the Royals got an all-star season out of Andrew Benintendi, and they later moved Andrew Benintendi the following year for 3 prospects. It was, good front office management. It was a good game plan when acquiring Andrew Benintendi. See what you can get out of him, and then when he's coming up on his contract year, we're going to try to move him for some prospects. But for where the Royals are at, not sure you should be scared away by trading away Blake Mitchell anymore or trading away guys that have been top 10 in your system for 2 to 3 years. You can't be scared away by it. And I don't see J.J. Bacole in the front office being scared away by it, but they don't want to be reckless. They want to find the right fit. They want to find the guy that you love to watch play, not just this coming year, but multiple years down the road. And I don't see them being concerned and kind of failing on the Jonathan India trade. It was the right move at the time. It was good decision-making. Like it's you still go with the process there, even if the results aren't going to be seen in year 1. Now, for this corner outfield bat, you kind of have to have the results show up in year 1 because you need better production from the outfield. And if you're going to get that difference maker, I'm not waiting 2 years for that player to show up. But that's why they don't always go after rentals. They want to have somebody that they can plug and play for the next 3 seasons, right? Where if you give up a young prospect, a top 5 guy in your system, you still have somebody that you're holding on to years down the road. And at the deadline, the last couple of years, if they were to acquire a rental player, they'd never really given up a big time, prospect. They'd never given up somebody that was, going to burn them terribly. We thought when they acquired Hunter Harvey, who had an extra year of control, that, maybe they were going to get burned in that deal. Caden Wallace was somebody that was number 2 in the Royals system. And at the time, you're going, man, the number 2 prospect was traded away for Hunter Harvey. Well, Caden Wallace hasn't done anything in the Washington organization. And that's what I go back to with, we overvalue our own prospects. Maybe we view them as being stars at the next level, but they never become that. And that shouldn't scare you away from making big-time deals this offseason and getting that middle of the order back. Do you believe it's time for the Royals to make a big trade involving one of their top prospects? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, I want to talk about the ghost runner rule. That 15-inning game we didn't have the chance to talk about yesterday, but now is the time to do that. We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find my content on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about the title sponsor in FanDuel, and we know the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. For my pick, I will go to the first noon kickoff for the Chiefs this year. It is Raider week, Chiefs and Raiders at Arrowhead Stadium. Why not take the over on receiving yards for Rashee Rice, his first game back of the season following that 6-game suspension? And I will take the Chiefs to cover a large spread in this rivalry game. But I am going to put my bets over there on FanDuel, and you should too. And don't forget to use our code. As I'm watching that crazy, chaotic, wild 15-inning game on Friday night, in which the Mariners and Jorge Polanco walk off the Tigers. If you've got any Tigers fans out there that are your friends, family members, you feel for them, because that was a crushing end to their season. A season that started with so much promise and hope. They blow their division lead in September. They do get past Cleveland, but I have to wonder if they played good baseball in September, they're the ones that get to host Game 5 and not the Seattle Mariners. As I'm watching this game, though, and I see, starters get thrown out there in the 13th and 14th inning, guys aren't coming through with runners in scoring position, I wanted it to be known, at least I put this out there on Twitter, that I don't feel we need the ghost runner rule anymore. And it was a bag of mixed reactions. We saw people saying absolutely, have hated it from the beginning, never understood why we needed the ghost runner. And then you had other people that said, well, I'm fine with it, and I honestly wish they'd have it in the postseason because it can add to that stress element of you're already dealing with somebody at second base. And then you had people that said, well, I don't want it for the postseason, but I want it for the regular season, and that's why this rule was put in place. And I'm fully aware of that the ghost runner rule is to speed up those games in May, in June, and July. It's a weeknight, it's a school night, and you want to be able to get home earlier than 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. And here's where I stand on it. The ghost runner rule is not needed in the postseason. It's not needed in the regular season. The reason I feel this way is there were not an abundance of 15 and 16 inning games before the ghost runner rule. It was not, in my opinion, a big enough problem. And here's the other part to it. And I know this sounds more so of I'm not trying to come across as condescending, and I'm not trying to call people out that would do this anyway. But if it's a school night and you're there with your family and it's the 10th inning and then you get into the 11th and the 12th and you're getting closer to midnight, you have all the power in the world to leave when you want to leave. And I know that sucks to go out to a game and then you don't even get to see the outcome of it. But I would say over the course of a 162-game season, what we saw on Friday night would maybe happen tops 2 times, in my opinion. I really feel that way. I go back before the ghost runner rule, watching Royals games, how many 15-inning games they had, or even 12 to 13-inning games. Like eventually what happens, as we see in the regular season, is if it's May or June, they're not throwing starters in that spot. They're not throwing their best relievers. In fact, you're probably on to the bottom 6th or 7th guy in your bullpen, right? So you at some point are going to give up, the tie, or you're going to give up the walk-off, and that's going to be the game here. I just felt that the ghost runner rule was put in place, and we've had a couple of games that go beyond the 10th inning, but I've always liked that traditional part of baseball, right? The pressure is on both these teams in extra innings to get it done. And to have the runner start at second, I mean, maybe we can simplify it and have him start at first, right? Where it's not a guy immediately in scoring position. You can still get a double play ball and get out of it, but you at least have one runner on. I don't know. That's the way I feel. It didn't bother me that much to watch late baseball. Now, I am somebody, and I know I could be a bit in the minority here. I enjoy staying up late. I love watching West Coast baseball, always have. I watch those games in length, and I know it's not the case for everybody. You don't want to stay up past midnight to watch baseball, especially not in a game in May or June. But see, that almost kind of adds to my point. If you were somebody saying, well, I don't want, to go into 13 to 14 inning games in a meaningless baseball game in May, right? I don't want that. Well, then you don't even care about the outcome to begin with. If you think this game in May, let's go in 13, 14, that's technically a meaningless game in the regular season, I just want it to be over with. I want there to be a result. Well, maybe you just want to have the result of the game, and I can totally understand that. But if you're already viewing it in the way of, I don't really care, I just want it to be done. I don't want it to go into the 13th or 14th inning where it's dragging on and on and on. But if you are in the camp, like I am, of I wouldn't hate it if this game went 14 or 15 innings. If you've got that stress element and you're seeing good baseball and it's competitive, I enjoy all of that. But that's also just my opinion on it. There are some people that don't want to stay up past 10:30 to watch a baseball game. And that's why the Rob Manfred runner, the Manfred rule was put in place here. The ghost runner rule was that you wouldn't be watching baseball past 10:30. You got a result. And you wouldn't have managers burning through their bullpen to win one game. But also back before the ghost runner rule, I don't think managers were burning through their bullpen either. They would still try to win those games. But you're counting on guys to get outs that you're usually not counting on to get the 9th inning or the 10th inning or the 11th inning. You're trusting your long reliever at that point. So there still would be a result decided, in my opinion, before the 5th inning or 15th inning. Maybe I've said the 5th inning a few times. I meant the 15th inning. You know what I'm talking about. It just didn't happen enough for me to think that there needed to be a change. I thought that it was going to be something in 2020, I believe is when it got put in place there, where you'd had this ghost runner rule. You try it out. It was a shortened season to begin with. Let's see what happens here. But the more that we've seen it over and over and over again, I just grow tired of it. I enjoyed what I saw on Friday. I get it's because it's a postseason element. You're not having that same atmosphere or that same competitiveness in May or in June. But I would rather watch extra innings baseball like that, even in the regular season. And if you took it away for 1 year and we had multiple 14-inning games and 15-inning games and it just was dragging on and on, then okay, the next year we're going to bring it back. But I would almost enjoy Major League Baseball taking it away for a year and seeing what happens. Let's count how many 15-inning games or just extra inning games that go beyond 11, because I feel that's the cutoff there. When you go past the 11th inning, it's like, oh, man, now we're still going. And I don't know when this game's going to end, and it might not be anytime soon. But I would like to go back to the old way of baseball. Now, I'm not a complete traditionalist, right? I feel that there can be better ways to speed up the game and to have better calls and to improve replay review. I believe that all benefits the game. I'm not sure that the ghost runner rule has benefited the game as much as the other stuff, right? If you already had the pace of play with the pitch clock. Like, we are not watching slow baseball anymore, which is why I don't see there being a need for the ghost runner. We're already breezing through the game. If you go a couple more innings in the 9th inning, the oddities that are late inning baseball, the odd nights, the odd day games where you go into 12, 13, or 14, I mean, you're through the first 9 innings at 2 hours and 20 minutes sometimes, instead of 3 hours and 20 minutes like it used to be when there was no pitch clock. So personally, I would take it away. I don't know if we need it anymore. What do you think? You can always let your opinion be heard in our comment section. Do you like the ghost runner rule? Do you want it for the regular season but not the postseason? You want it for both? Or do you want to get rid of it completely? Definitely just let us know below. But that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to look at another free agent target. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.